The book's about evolutionary psychology and its relationship to consumerism. What does evolutionary psychology have to say about what we spend our money on?
There are a myriad of consumer phenomena that happen in exactly the same way around the world. So they transcend culture, they transcend time period, and they do that precisely because they are part of a common biological heritage. And so what I try to do is look for these universals in the consumer arena and then argue that they are rooted in our shared biological heritage.
Ferraris, pornography, juicy burgers, and gift giving. What is the significance of those four things? Why did you choose those to put in this
That's a great question. So basically I'm trying to demonstrate that there are four key Darwinian modules or meta drives that drive much of our consumer patterns. When it comes to juicy burgers, this refers to the survival module. So most animals have to face two recurring problems: making sure they don't become somebody's dinner and making sure that they find dinner. And so our evolved gustatory preferences are exactly an adaptation to that. It's not difficult for us to then succumb to the temptation of the Burger King and the McDonald's because they are offering products that are fully congruent with our taste buds. When it comes to pornography or Ferraris, that refers to the mating module. So let's take, for example, the Ferrari. Well, I argue that the Ferrari is exactly the same in the human context as, say, the peacock's tail is in the peacock. So the peacock shows his tail, and the females will choose that male who has the most iridescent colors, the biggest tail, the most symmetric patterns, and the Ferrari is effectively signaling similar things, but in the human context. We did a study a few years ago with one of my former graduate students where we brought people into the lab, men, and we had them either drive a fancy Porsche or a beaten-up old sedan. At the end of each of these driving conditions, we would collect salivary assays to measure their fluctuating levels of testosterone. And as you might expect, you put a young male in a Porsche and his testosterone shoots through the roof. Because that endocrinological mechanism is akin to saying, hey, I was just imbued with a social win. We know in many social species, when two males fight, the winner has a rise in testosterone, the loser has a drop in testosterone.
And what's an example of that among women?
How do women's behaviors as consumers change as a function of their menstrual cycles? And so I did a study recently with one of my doctoral students where we tracked for 35 contiguous days so that we covered the full menstrual cycle, every imaginable consummatory behavior that a woman engages in across those 35 days. When it comes to food, women engage in a lot more food-related behaviors in the luteal stage of so in the non-fertile stage of their menstrual cycle. In the fertile stage of their menstrual cycle, they engage in a lot more beautification-related things. So they're engaging in sexual signaling. So how provocatively they dress, whether they wear high heels, how they wear their hair, how much skin they show, ends up to be perfectly correlated to whether or not they are in the fertile phase. So here's two examples, testosterone in one case and the menstrual cycle in one case, that demonstrates how our hormones affect our behaviors as consumers.
So you're saying that our consumption is driven by these Darwinian mechanisms. A lot of regulation now assumes we have not enough information, or we have bad information. We need to have the calories listed at McDonald's, or we need to have warnings listed on cigarette packages. But you seem to be saying it's not that the information is bad, it's that we have these natural drives within us.
That's exactly right. So if you're coming from the standard social marketing perspective, consumers engage in bad behaviors or behaviors that have deleterious consequences because they don't have the right information. Teach them and they will behave better. But we know for a fact that that's not right. When it comes to smoking for young males, telling them that they might develop lung cancer doesn't work very well. Telling them that they stand the risk of becoming impotent at a very young age actually does affect their behavior. And it doesn't take much of a biologist to understand that telling a young male that he might be impotent and not be able to perform is an effective communication strategy.